Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Jackson, Mississippi, August 14th, 2022, 8 o'clock p.m. Mississippi's story is much like the United States itself. It's a red state, though it does have some blue cities within it, and those are the ones that black people are in control of, including the state's capital of Jackson, Mississippi. And that has long been a target that the white right in Mississippi have lusted to try to capture. Mississippi's Capitol Police Force had previously only provided security for government buildings, that is until 3 years ago when the GOP-controlled legislature and governor decided they were going to try to take over the state capitol by pushing legislation to replace Jackson's local court system with a single white judge who would be appointed, not elected, by the GOP state chief justice and prosecutors appointed by the GOP state attorney general. They also have been trying to expand the jurisdiction of the state-run Capitol Police in a district that includes parts of Jackson. They've even had the most lawless court in America, the notoriously racist Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, rubber stamp their blatantly illegal takeover of Jackson's local airport on the grounds that because the airport serves a regional area, it should be under state control. Something that has never been the case in 100 years. Nobody ever thought that the state should be in control of the airport until now. All of this in response to black people who are in control of these major cities. If these good old boys down there were so concerned about how taxpayer funds are spent, they need to look at themselves and how they've been wasting untold millions in state money. They could ask Brett Favre about information on that one. And by far the biggest part of the GOP takeover of the city has been militaristic in nature, just an open plan to put white officers on the streets of Jackson allegedly to help local law enforcement, even though local law enforcement didn't ask for it. Because what's actually been happening is you have a gang of neo-Klansmen who haven't been doing anything to reduce crime, though they have been getting their jollies killing unarmed black citizens and framing them for crimes they didn't even commit. This encroachment upon the sovereignty of black leadership in these cities has been going on for years, and the black citizens have been opposing this on the grounds that this would only result in a white racist gang of marauders and criminals committing crimes, with innocent people winding up hurt or killed and creating legal messes that will take decades to clean up if they can ever be cleaned up at all. Of course, black Jacksonites have had to wage this war alone. Just like they did in New Bern, Alabama and everywhere else, Democrats have been nowhere to be seen. And it's against this backdrop that we turn to the subject of this morning's briefing. On the night of August 14th, 2022, Sinatra Jordan was driving a rented car. He had a passenger, Sherita Harris. The rented car was a Nissan Rogue with Arizona plates. Sherita's car was damaged and Jordan was driving. About the only thing he could be accused of was driving with a suspended license. Mr. Jordan and Miss Harris were cruising downtown Jackson looking for a place to relax. They had known each other for years, but had only recently begun hanging out. As they drove down State Street, Mr. Jordan realized that they were being followed. It was an unmarked cop car that had begun trailing them. This unmarked car then pulled up behind them and started flashing its lights. As Mr. Jordan moved his car into the right lane to pull over, the police suddenly opened fire. Mr. Jordan looked over to Miss Harris and realized she was covered in blood. She had been shot in the head. Mr. Jordan wisely didn't stop driving and instead tried to get the two of them to safety. The cop car stayed in close pursuit. Mr. Jordan had made it to his neighborhood, but he realized that the police who had just tried to kill him and who had grievously wounded his friend were still in pursuit. Hoping to lead them away, Mr. Jordan pulled over, got out, and ran. He would eventually surrender to police who, because they were in his neighborhood, suddenly were gun-shy. Both Mr. Jordan and Miss Harris were taken to the hospital. Mr. Jordan, still not knowing why the police had ambushed him and his girlfriend, was taken to the notorious Raymond Detention Center. When Mr. Jordan asked to know how Miss Harris was doing, he was told she was in surgery. Miss Harris's ordeal would be comparably horrible to what Mr. Jordan would endure. She would have to undergo multiple surgeries to remove a bullet from her brain and to repair her left eye and ear, but her face would remain partially paralyzed. She would struggle to chew or to drink liquids. She would suffer bouts of dizziness and had trouble remembering things. Her injuries made it difficult to do routine tasks like cooking, driving, working, and caring for her children. Now, predictably, this gang of Mississippi state capitol race soldiers didn't carry body cameras, and their police cars didn't have dashboard cameras either. That was the entire point of setting up this little experiment. There's supposed to be some sort of white supremacist secret police. The two Mississippi Capitol Police thugs responsible for trying to take the lives of Mr. Jordan and Miss Harris are Jeffrey Walker and Michael Reinwald. These two, of course, came up with a story of their own with no evidence, mind you, saying the opposite of what Mr. Jordan claimed, and it's full of the kind of weasel words and qualifying language that you would expect from cops who attend those seminars where the police union pays some lawyer to coach them on what to say when they commit some crime against a citizen. These two claimed that Mr. Jordan had run a red light, that Reinwald had merely started to get out of the unmarked car when Mr. Jordan suddenly took off. The so-called chase went onto the interstate, where Reinwald claimed that he heard what appeared to be a gunshot and saw what he thought to be a muzzle flash and noticed that the back window of the Nissan Rogue was shattered. Reinwald claims that was when he opened fire. Now you notice how the weasel words actually fit what Mr. Jordan claimed, except the difference is you got these two cops who are trying to play the orders of events backwards. And if this all sounds familiar, it should. This is exactly what Ohio police did to Jalen Walker. That case was also a police pursuit that was filled with all kinds of claims that were never verified. Police claimed that they heard a sound consistent with a gunshot. They claimed that a traffic camera captured what they believe was a muzzle flash. So just like with Mr. Jordan, we see all of these qualifiers. None of them could say for sure what they had heard or seen, but they knew that they had to kill Jalen Walker. He was gunned down in a hail of bullets. And he was also found to not be armed when police killed him. Now, these are the kind of lies that the cops told in an instance where they did have body cameras and dashboard cameras. How much more egregious do you think the lies would be in Mississippi, a place where they don't require police to wear body cameras or have dashboard cameras? So it doesn't matter what state they're in, they all stick to the same lies because they've all been coached on the same lies to say. Walker claimed that Mr. Jordan had fired from his vehicle a second time, so both he and Reinwald had no choice but to continue to shoot at the car. Walker and Reinhold also claimed that Mr. Jordan had thrown something from the car. They then claimed that some neighborhood witness confirmed that it was a bag full of dope and guns that Mr. Jordan had thrown from the vehicle, but when asked where this bag of drugs and guns were at, the two cops claimed the witness told them that 3 armed men took them. How convenient. No dashboard camera to document this alleged bag of contraband being thrown from the vehicle, and their mystery witness tells them that some unknown men, no doubt black, had run off with the only evidence. Do you really need someone to tell you that they were just lying their butts off? The local DA's office charged Mr. Jordan with shooting at the police, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigations handles the cover-up of police-involved shootings, the handling of investigations of police-involved shootings. Throughout their interrogations, Mr. Jordan remained adamant that he never had a gun, even when state investigators tried the old, "we have a witness that saw you toss the gun from the car," and claimed that they would use DNA to tie him to the weapon. Mr. Jordan never wavered from the truth.
I don't even own a gun. Man, we can do whatever we got to do, and I guarantee you, when all this over with, y'all gonna say, "Damn, Mr. Jordan did not have a gun on him."
The closest to a gun that the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation had found was a starter pistol, which wasn't even relevant to the case. The NBI claimed that they had found bullet fragments inside Mr. Jordan's car, but they were never able to link it to any alleged weapon that he had, and apparently they didn't even bother to ask if the bullet fragments had come from the bullets fired by the police. They found some spent shell casings in the street, but again, couldn't link it to a weapon. And when they reviewed surveillance video of this police ambush, they didn't find any evidence to support the white cops' claims that anything had been tossed from the window of Mr. Jordan's vehicle. Regardless, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation knows that when it comes to black people, you don't have to have evidence, you just have to have an accusation. And so they submitted their case to the state attorney general to be reviewed so a determination could be made as to whether or not they wanted to go to trial. However, the state attorney general's office never replied. They never said anything about the case. For 2 years. This was 2 years after the start of the pandemic, so they tried to blame that for their delay, though they didn't use that excuse to justify Mr. Jordan's incarceration until after news of his case came to light. Now, this is the reason why the case of Mr. Jordan is the subject of this morning's briefing. You see, in Mississippi, criminal cases must go to trial no later than 270 days, that is 9 months, after a defendant has been indicted and arraigned. But there is no limit to how long they can hold someone while waiting to be indicted. The talking point that those reprobates like to use is that the Constitution gives you the right to a speedy trial, but not to a speedy indictment. One nonprofit reported that over 700 defendants were held in Mississippi jails for more than a year. Mr. Jordan was kept in legal limbo for over 2 years. He was never actually indicted. His lawyer had asked the court for copies of the evidence against him and a speedy trial, but no evidence was ever given. So he was being held without a trial date, or it looks like even a formal indictment. The prison he was being held at is notorious for its horrifying conditions. Full of assaults, deaths, being freezing in winter, scorching in summer, the roof leaks, toilets don't work, and inmates have to sleep on the floor like Mr. Jordan did. In December of 2023, Sherita Harris filed a civil suit against the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, the Capitol Police, as well as both Walker and Reinwald. The corrupt state attorney general of Mississippi, however, a woman named Lynn Fitch, is representing these two murderous scumbags in that civil suit. Believe it or not, that's what they're doing with the people of Mississippi's tax dollars. Last August, the Mississippi Attorney General's office, after over 2.5 years of doing absolutely nothing on this case, suddenly requested a grand jury to hear the case. They tried to claim that the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation had sent them an incomplete case file and that was the reason for the long delay. On December 26th, Reinwald and Walker were each indicted by a grand jury on 2 counts of aggravated assault, one for shooting Harris, one for shooting at Jordan. They both pleaded not guilty. By February of this year, Mr. Jordan still hadn't gone to trial. No date had been set, and this time something that's all but unprecedented took place. Andre DeGruy, who was the head of the state's public defender's office, personally took on representing Mr. Jordan in court. This was part of an effort to reduce the state public defender's backlog. He made it a point not to have Mr. Jordan's trial postponed again. At that point, the DA's office was suddenly very agreeable to negotiating a plea deal. Though he had done absolutely nothing wrong, Mr. Jordan felt that merely to get out of prison, he had to plead guilty to a reduced charge of fleeing the scene and also a 2020 felony charge related to some stolen motorcycles, which had nothing to do with the night in question. The 940 days that he'd spent in pretrial detention went down as time served, and he got 2.5 years of supervised release. And as for the 2 thugs in blue who had tried to take the lives of Mr. Jordan and Miss Harris, Mississippi officials had hoped that this case would go away, but it didn't. And now the bastards are scrambling to try to make it seem like they just didn't know what was going on, but now they're so concerned and they're finally trying to do their jobs. They know that these same white GOP legislators could and should be the subjects of criminal prosecution themselves. Those state legislators knew that it was thoroughly and completely predictable that taking over Jackson's law enforcement by a bunch of white supremacist thugs would end precisely this way, and that this was exactly what the residents of Jackson had been protesting. They said this was exactly what would happen, and it did. This is what black people mean when we talk about black fatigue. It's exhausting having to have the exact same battles with the same racist degenerates over and over and over again. And of course, you won't be surprised to learn that this isn't Walker and Reinwald's only run-in with the law. Only a few weeks after the attempted murder of Mr. Jordan and Miss Harris, Reinwald and another rogue cop, Stephen Frederick, were responsible for killing Jalen Lewis, a black man who was also driving with a female passenger. Mr. Lewis was also the target of a so-called traffic stop, which these 2 thugs claimed necessitated their shooting him to death. Last month, Frederick and Reinwald were indicted for manslaughter in that case as well. To this day, the family of Mr. Lewis still hasn't gotten an explanation for why an unmarked vehicle was pursuing him or what the alleged reason was for pulling him over, much less shooting him dead. Well, you'll probably notice that this Frederick character has all kinds of tattoos on him. Now, how many of those do you want to bet are white supremacist symbols? Mississippi is Klan Central, so let's not pretend as if this is just innocent body art. Among other things, Walker has been charged with violating a driver's civil rights and accused of beating someone after a chase. So the attack that these 2 carried out against Mr. Jordan isn't the only time they've done this. You have a verifiable pattern here, which shows that what they're doing are not accidents. Reinwald was fired in April. Walker was allowed to leave the Capitol Police in 2023. They're both scheduled to go on trial in June, only 6 months after they were charged, which doesn't matter because they're both free on bail, which is the entire reason that what happened to Mr. Jordan was so predictably reprehensible. When we in the black media talk about racial immunity from law, this is what we're talking about. Now remember, the corrupt state attorney general in Mississippi who was so eager to bring some quickie charges against these 2, she's also simultaneously defending them against the civil suit that was brought against them. But of course, she's claiming that there's no conflict of interest here. She should be allowed to both simultaneously defend them in civil court and prosecute them in criminal court. The judge on this case ordered the Attorney General, however, to appoint a special prosecutor. But to me, that's a problem, because you can't expect someone corrupt like this, who was responsible for this case being dragged out for over 2.5 years, and who was defending these two scumbags in civil court, to now be allowed to choose who's going to prosecute them. If anything, the judge should be the one who appoints the special prosecutor. It just goes to show, as Neely Fuller said, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation. See, these bigots, they've always believed in sacrificing some pawns to try to save the rest of their pieces on the board. Now, all of this is happening in the U.S., and these incidents occurred right under the nose of the Biden administration, who did nothing about it and said nothing about it. Yet today you got Democrats and their shills who have the nerve to talk about preserving democracy in America. Because they're not black, they don't care that there's never actually been democracy in this country. White liberals, Democrats, etc. have only recently realized that there's a fascistic streak in the GOP, but black people, as always, have been the canaries in the coal mine. As we've seen in places like Michigan with their so-called emergency manager law, and in Florida, to Tennessee, to Jackson, Mississippi, the white right has been pushing all manner of harebrained schemes to remove control of black cities under the lie that it's all about public finances or public safety, while thoroughly ignoring the crime-ravaged and impoverished white counties and cities in their own midst. The Democrats have sat on their hands while black cities have been selectively targeted. Even after the Flint water crisis, Democrats have done nothing to push back and reverse these GOP takeovers, to say nothing of punishing the perpetrators. And yet now those same Democrats want to pretend that they're suddenly concerned about all of this. They've only just now noticed how the Republican Party has been running roughshod over people's rights. Yeah, they're noticing it now because the Republicans are trying the same stunts against them. Now it's a problem. The attempted murder of Sherita Harris and the murder of Jalen Lewis was not some unintended consequence of this GOP takeover of Jackson. The deliberate targeted racial killings of black residents was the entire point. That was the intended consequence. This was what they wanted to start doing on a statewide scale. Jackson is just supposed to be the beginning. It makes no sense to vote for Democrats unless and until they publicly run on a platform that they're going to dismantle these racist schemes by the Republicans and punish them for it. Because it doesn't matter if it was the decades-long travesty in New Bern, Alabama, or Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi. Where black people are concerned, there's never an example of Republican overreach that's egregious enough for Democrats to make a crusade out of stopping it. Democrats organize statewide referendums to make abortion legal in red states. So they've got no problem at all challenging GOP overreach when it affects white women, when Clarence Thomas merely hinted that the Supreme Court should revisit their decision that legalized gay marriage. Democrats and Republicans both instantly put aside all their differences and during an election year banded together to make gay marriage legal at the federal level. The Democrats have never done anything like that for issues affecting black people, even when they make their insincere noises about voting rights, which for them means illegal aliens being able to vote. They still don't actually lift a finger to do anything about it. Democrats are liars when they claim that they want to fight fascism, when they've spent decades silently complicit in every Republican scheme to turn the states into democracy-free zones. But there's also something else here. Democrats have engaged in the exact same tactics of keeping innocent black people incarcerated and unconstitutionally refusing to bring black defendants to trial themselves. I've told you in the past about Michael Walker, a black man who was illegally imprisoned by the LAPD for over 2 years without trial. The police falsely claimed that they were able to keep him jailed because the investigation was still ongoing. But the cops who falsely imprisoned him deliberately concealed evidence that they knew would exonerate him, and the DA out there refused to drop the charges or to do anything about them. This happened in liberal Los Angeles, which is in liberal California. And across the country, in liberal New York, the exact same thing was happening there too. You've had numerous cases of black defendants being held at Rikers Island without trial. Many of them held in isolation, which is just a form of psychological torture. This is what's been going on in Democrat strongholds for decades. The case of Michael Walker goes back 20 years. So we see that when it comes to anti-black racism, it's a bipartisan issue. Both of the major parties are equally guilty of it. Both parties do it. So neither party wants to see these practices stopped, and they damn sure don't want to see anyone punished for it. This is why we need a specific anti-black hate crime law, and it has to be one that has provisions to punish the police for the crimes they commit against us, concealing evidence, locking people up without charge or trial. And this is not something that we should try to nicely and politely ask the Democrats to do. They've been part of the problem. This is going to be about grabbing them by the scruff of the neck and forcing them to do it, and ignoring all of their shills and plants who say, well, if the Democrats aren't in office, the Republicans will be even worse. That's the game the Democrats like to play. They like to let the Republicans put all of these anti-black measures on the books, and then the Democrats say, you better vote for us, or else. Or else what? Are you going to do anything about it? No, we're not going to do anything about it, but if you don't want things to get even worse, you better vote for us. Well, if there's one thing that we should take away from the case of Mr. Jordan, it's that justice delayed is justice denied, and in either case, injustice should never be forgiven. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Reasonable Dude, Sean, Andrea Gabori, Samora Morris, and Stephen Mayfield. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.